When two people stop contacting each other, the silence becomes louder than any argument, any explanation, any apology. It is in that stillness that the truth finally comes out and the real game begins, because silence is not empty. Silence is a test. Silence is a mirror that exposes what the connection truly meant or what it never was. When silence enters a connection, it becomes the most honest phase of the entire relationship. Words can be manipulated, intentions can be disguised, and emotions can be acted out, but silence strips everything down to the truth. When two people stop contacting each other, they no longer hide behind routine interactions, forced check-ins, or polite conversations. The distance reveals what the heart truly feels, because where there is genuine care, absence hurts, and where there is indifference, silence feels like relief. In conclusion, silence exposes sincerity, intentions, and emotional depth far more accurately than any conversation ever could. Silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back not just the other person's feelings but your own emotional reality. When communication breaks, you notice what you miss, what you don't miss, and what you were holding onto out of habit rather than love. You learn whether you valued the person or simply the comfort they provided. When two people step back, the emotional clarity that emerges is powerful and often surprising. In conclusion, silence forces both individuals to evaluate their true emotional needs, revealing which feelings were real and which were driven by habit or fear. When you both stop contacting each other, patterns become clearer. You begin to understand how much effort each person was contributing, how much emotional energy you were investing, and whether it was reciprocated. Sometimes the silence shows you that you were the one always initiating, always reaching out, always keeping the connection alive. Other times it shows you that they were more invested than you realized. Silence balances the scales. In conclusion, stepping back allows each person to finally see the imbalance or balance in effort, revealing whether the relationship was mutually nurtured or one-sided all along. Silence also exposes attachment styles. For someone emotionally secure, silence becomes space to reflect. For someone anxious, it becomes fear. For someone avoidant, it becomes comfort. The way a person reacts to silence says more about their character than their words ever could. It shows maturity, emotional grounding, and the true capacity to maintain a healthy connection. If someone panics or disappears, that response is revealing. In conclusion, silence highlights whether each person is emotionally mature or emotionally reactive, exposing their relationship patterns and how they handle emotional distance. Silence is the point where distractions disappear. There are no messages, no updates, no reassurance coming in. This forces you to confront the reality of your emotional dependency. Were you in love with them, or with the feeling of being wanted? Did you love the person or the attention? Silence removes the comfort of their presence and exposes the dependency hidden underneath. If you feel empty without constant contact, it becomes clear that you relied on them too much. In conclusion, silence forces self-reflection, revealing whether your emotions were grounded in genuine connection or merely in dependency and validation seeking. When two people stop talking, something else becomes visible: intentions. The person who honestly cares will not allow silence to stretch forever. They will eventually reach out because genuine feelings create discomfort in distance, but someone who never valued you will not feel compelled to break the silence. Their absence becomes their answer. Silence reveals desire, priority, and emotional connection without anyone having to say a single word. In conclusion, silence unmasks intentions completely, showing who genuinely values the relationship and who was simply entertained by the connection when it was convenient for them. Silence also reveals emotional discipline. Many people break no contact impulsively out of fear of losing someone, not because the relationship was healthy. But the one who can sit in silence, reflect, and not act out of panic has emotional strength. The time apart shows who is controlled by their emotions and who has the maturity to understand the difference between missing someone and needing them. In conclusion, silence tests emotional discipline, separating impulsive reactions from grounded decisions and showing which person has the strength to prioritize long-term clarity over short-term emotional comfort. This pause in communication becomes a filter. Anyone who isn't meant for you will fall away effortlessly during silence, and anyone who is aligned with you will feel the absence, reflect, and return with more clarity. Silence sorts emotional connections without conflict, drama, or begging. It reveals loyalty, consistency, and genuine emotional investment. It shows who chooses you, even when you are no longer available at their fingertips. In conclusion, silence filters out the wrong people and strengthens the bond with the right ones, proving that what is meant for you will never disappear in quiet spaces. Ultimately, silence is the stage where truth replaces illusion. Everything becomes visible: your emotional wounds, their priorities, the strength of the bond, and the nature of your attachment. When communication stops, all that remains is authenticity. The silence either deepens the connection or closes it forever. But either way, it brings clarity that conversations alone could never provide. It reveals where hearts truly stand. In conclusion, silence is the ultimate truth teller, exposing what words hide and revealing whether the connection was real, temporary, or never meant to last in the first place. Emotional strength is not tested when everything is smooth. It is tested when silence enters a connection. When two people stop contacting each other, the real game is not about who misses who first. It is about who has the emotional maturity to sit with their discomfort without acting out of panic. Many people crumble in silence because they depended on constant reassurance, but those who can remain steady discover their own strength. In conclusion, emotional strength is proven not by chasing reassurance, but by staying grounded in silence and allowing clarity, not fear, to guide your choices moving forward. Silence forces a person to confront themselves. Without messages, validation, affection, or updates, the mind becomes louder and uncomfortable truths surface. You start noticing what triggers your anxiety, where your insecurities lie, and how much of your emotional stability depended on someone else's presence. This is where the real test happens. Do you try to escape the discomfort by breaking the silence impulsively, or do you face your emotions honestly? In conclusion, silence becomes the arena where you confront your emotional weaknesses and discover the true level of your self-control, patience, and inner stability. When communication stops, insecurities begin speaking. Thoughts like maybe they don't care or maybe they've moved on try to push you into reacting emotionally. But emotional strength is the ability to separate imagination from reality. It means not making decisions from fear or abandonment wounds. People who can stay calm during silence demonstrate emotional maturity that most relationships struggle to reach. They understand that silence does not mean rejection, it means reflection. In conclusion, emotional strength shows itself when you refuse to let insecurity dictate your reactions, choosing emotional clarity over impulsive responses rooted in fear. The person who panics first is usually the one emotionally dependent, not emotionally connected. Emotional strength is measured by your ability to sit with absence without losing yourself. Many people break silence not because the relationship deserves another chance, but because they cannot tolerate their own emotional discomfort. But stronger individuals understand that silence is part of emotional evolution. They don't run from it, they grow through it. In conclusion, silence exposes whether your emotions are grounded in genuine care or driven by dependency, proving emotional strength through restraint instead of emotional impulsiveness. Silence becomes a test of emotional boundaries. When you no longer have immediate access to someone, you must decide whether your longing is rooted in love or in the old habit of being constantly connected. Strong individuals do not allow emotional urges to override their self-respect. They understand that if a relationship is meant to continue, it will, without being forced. Weakness needs response, strength allows time. In conclusion, emotional strength is shown by honoring boundaries during silence, proving that your decisions are based on self-worth rather than emotional pressure or temporary longing. During the absence, both people discover their coping mechanisms. Some distract themselves to avoid feelings, while emotionally stronger people process their emotions with honesty. They acknowledge what they feel without letting it control them. They reflect on what the silence is teaching them about themselves, their patterns, and the relationship itself. This ability to reflect instead of react is what emotional stability truly looks like. In conclusion, silence uncovers whether you cope through avoidance or reflection, proving that true emotional strength lies in understanding your emotions, not escaping them. Silence also reveals your capacity for patience. Emotionally strong people understand that nothing meaningful requires urgency. They don't chase because they know that anything worth having will return with clarity. They accept the possibility of loss without letting it destroy their peace. This emotional patience is rare, but it is the foundation of secure connections and personal growth. Weakness demands immediate answers. Strength allows the truth to unfold naturally. In conclusion, patience in silence demonstrates emotional maturity, proving that secure individuals value clarity over instant reassurance and trust over anxious chasing. When communication ends, you face a moment where you must choose emotional wisdom over emotional reaction. Strength means choosing not to message someone simply because you feel lonely. It means choosing peace over panic. It means trusting that silence is part of the process, not a rejection. Emotionally mature people let silence guide them toward understanding, not desperation. They know that rushing back into communication ruins the clarity silence was designed to create. In conclusion, emotional strength is defined by your ability to resist impulsive emotional decisions and instead choose inner peace, patience, and self-respect. Ultimately, silence teaches you emotional independence. It shows you that you can survive without immediate answers, without constant connection, without someone holding your emotional hand. The real game begins when you realize that your strength does not come from another person. It comes from within you. If the relationship continues, you enter it stronger. If it ends, you walk away wiser. Either way, you win. In conclusion, emotional strength is proven when you emerge from silence more self-assured, emotionally balanced and grounded, understanding that your peace cannot depend on someone else's presence. Distance exposes the true essence of a connection, because when two people stop contacting each other, the emotional fog begins to clear. Without constant communication, you start noticing what the relationship actually gave you versus what you imagined it was giving you. Some people realize they miss the emotional presence, the shared comfort, and the genuine bond. Others realize they simply miss the routine and the idea of companionship. Silence forces these truths to the surface and separates emotional reality from emotional illusion. In conclusion, distance reveals whether your feelings were grounded in genuine emotional connection or simply attachment to the routine and comfort the other person provided. When there is no communication, the heart discovers the difference between longing for a person and longing for attention. Many believe they are in love, but when silence enters, they discover they were addicted to the validation. True emotional connection remains strong even in separation. Attachment becomes unstable and painful. This is why silence becomes a powerful diagnostic tool. It uncovers whether the relationship was mutual or merely fulfilling an emotional gap. In conclusion, silence exposes whether your bond was based on emotional fulfillment or merely the temporary attention that made you feel valued in the moment. The absence between two people shows whether the connection was supportive or draining. When communication stops, you reflect on how the relationship made you feel: peaceful, anxious, uplifted, or exhausted. An emotionally healthy bond leaves you missing the person, but not your sanity. An unhealthy attachment leaves you craving them like a habit, even though they drained your emotional energy. Silence gives the mind enough space to analyze these patterns without being clouded by ongoing emotional interactions. In conclusion, distance reveals whether the relationship was emotionally nourishing or emotionally draining, giving you clarity on whether returning to it would heal you or harm you. Silence teaches you how much of your emotional identity was dependent on the other person. When communication ends, you feel the void where their presence used to be, and you start realizing whether that void came from love or from emotional dependency. Dependency creates panic and fear of abandonment, while love creates longing, but not desperation. This difference becomes visible only in silence. Many people confuse emotional addiction for love, but separation exposes it instantly and brutally. In conclusion, silence unveils whether your emotions were rooted in healthy love or unhealthy dependence, helping you identify the true nature of your emotional investment. Distance highlights whether the bond was based on compatibility or on emotional gaps. When communication stops, you begin questioning what truly brought you together: shared values, shared vision, or simply shared loneliness. Real emotional connection survives silence because it was built on mutual growth and understanding. Fragile attachment breaks down because it was built on filling emptiness rather than building partnership. This clarity only appears when space is created. In conclusion, silence separates relationships built on genuine compatibility from those formed out of emotional voids, revealing whether the connection had a strong foundation or was destined to fade. When you step back from constant interaction, you see if your emotions calm down or spiral. True love creates inner warmth even in distance because it is rooted in respect and sincerity. Attachment creates emotional chaos because it is rooted in fear of loss. Silence highlights this difference with remarkable precision. You begin noticing how your body reacts peacefully, anxiously, or obsessively. This emotional reaction is not random, it reflects the truth of the connection. In conclusion, distance reveals whether your emotional connection brought inner peace or emotional instability, helping you understand the psychological impact the relationship had on your well-being. Silence clarifies your emotional intentions. Without contact, you start questioning what you truly want. Do you want the person, or do you simply want the feeling of being wanted? Without messages coming in, you cannot hide from your own truth. Many realize they were clinging to the relationship because it gave them identity. Others discover that their feelings remain strong because they genuinely value the person. This emotional honesty only emerges in separation. In conclusion, silence forces you to confront your true intentions, revealing whether your desire comes from authentic emotional connection or from the fear of losing emotional security. Time apart also exposes the emotional intentions of the other person. If your bond was meaningful, they will feel the absence deeply. They will think, reflect, and eventually reach out. Real connection creates emotional discomfort in silence because the person matters. But if the relationship was mere attachment or convenience, they will not feel any urgency to reconnect. Silence reveals their depth of investment without forcing them to speak. In conclusion, distance shows whether the other person's feelings were genuine or temporary, allowing you to see their emotional sincerity without words or explanations. Ultimately, distance highlights the true emotional nature of the relationship. It shows whether the bond continues to live quietly within you or whether it fades without constant interaction. Real love grows in silence, attachment dies in silence. This is the simplest and most powerful truth distance reveals. If the connection strengthens during separation, it was real. If it evaporates, it was never meant to last. Silence delivers the clarity conversations often fail to give. In conclusion, silence becomes the ultimate emotional test, revealing whether the connection was rooted in love, attachment, necessity, or destiny, guiding you toward truth with undeniable clarity. When silence enters a connection, the real transformation begins not between two people, but within each individual. When communication stops, the mind finally has room to breathe, reflect, and analyze the emotional patterns that existed. The one who uses this silence to grow emotionally gains a tremendous advantage. Instead of focusing on who will contact first, they focus on rebuilding their confidence, realigning their priorities, and understanding their worth. Silence is not punishment, it is a reset, and those who evolve during this reset come out stronger. In conclusion, the true power shifts toward the one who uses silence as a period of growth, gaining inner strength and emotional clarity that transforms the entire dynamic. Silence becomes a space where emotional wounds surface, and the person who chooses to heal instead of chase becomes emotionally superior. Many people fear silence because it brings up unresolved pain and insecurities, but those who face the discomfort become stronger. They understand that the end goal is not winning the other person back, it is winning themselves back. Growth during silence reveals maturity and shows that you are no longer driven by emotional dependency. In conclusion, growth during silence empowers you to heal the wounds that once controlled your reactions, giving you emotional strength that shifts the power permanently in your favor. Those who grow in the silence begin to see the relationship from a higher perspective. Instead of obsessing over the absence, they understand the lessons hidden in the connection. They acknowledge their mistakes, learn from their patterns, and gain emotional intelligence, while the other person may still be stuck in confusion or ego. The one who grows becomes more self-aware. This self-awareness becomes power. It turns confusion into clarity and regret into wisdom. In conclusion, the person who develops self-awareness during silence gains intellectual and emotional power, rising above the emotional chaos that once clouded their judgment. Growth in silence gives you the power of detachment, not coldness, not indifference, but calm emotional detachment where your peace is no longer controlled by someone else's presence or absence. Detachment is freedom because you no longer feel desperate for answers or validation. You begin to understand that if someone is meant for you, they will return without force. And if they don't, you will still stand strong. Detachment removes fear. In conclusion, silence teaches you the liberating strength of detachment, allowing you to reclaim emotional control and show that your peace is stronger than your need for external reassurance. The person who evolves during silence becomes emotionally attractive in a new way. Growth makes you calmer, wiser, clearer, and people feel that energy. When contact eventually happens, you no longer approach the relationship from insecurity, but from confidence. Whether the other person returns or not, you appear stronger and more mature. This shift in energy gives you the upper hand because now the relationship depends on your emotional state, not the other way around. In conclusion, silence enhances your emotional attractiveness by grounding your energy, giving you a calm strength that naturally shifts the relationship power dynamic toward you. Silence gives you time to rebuild your personal life, your goals, health, routine, focus, and identity. When you invest in yourself during this separation, your emotional dependency weakens and your self-worth rises. You stop seeing the relationship as the center of your life and start treating it as a part of your life. The other person senses this stronger version of you, consciously or unconsciously. The one who grows becomes harder to replace. In conclusion, self-improvement during silence elevates your value, making you emotionally stronger and increasingly irreplaceable in the eyes of the other person. Growth in silence builds emotional confidence, the kind that cannot be faked. You no longer fear losing someone because you finally understand you will never lose yourself again. This confidence changes everything. You communicate better, set boundaries more clearly, and no longer accept the bare minimum. You become someone who cannot be manipulated by mixed signals or temporary emotions. Confidence is power, and silence helps you build it. In conclusion, emotional confidence formed during silence gives you the power to create healthier relationships, transforming you from emotionally reactive to emotionally grounded. The more you grow in silence, the less the past version of you controls your decisions. You break the patterns that kept you stuck, overthinking, chasing, settling, and needing validation. Growth rewrites your emotional script. You no longer respond from fear, you respond from wisdom. This internal evolution becomes a game changer because relationships are shaped by emotional behavior, not words. The new you holds the real leverage. In conclusion, evolving in silence frees you from old destructive patterns, giving you the emotional intelligence needed to take control of your life and relationships. Ultimately, silence becomes a spiritual and emotional transformation chamber. The one who grows during this time becomes the stronger, wiser, more stable version of themselves. When communication eventually resumes, if it does, the real power lies with the person who evolved. They no longer return as the same emotional version that left. Distance becomes their strength, growth becomes their weapon, and clarity becomes their advantage. In conclusion, the true power belongs to the one who grows in the silence, because they emerge emotionally elevated, mentally clear, and strong enough to choose what aligns with their worth.